IB guy coming to Vince's house as well as the one he ran into at Costco last weekend.
Yeah, it was awesome. Irish Blooded is who I got to see at Costco, and he was having a graduation party, or he was ordering a cake, and we didn't realize who each other were, obviously. And he's just like, "Hey, is that a sheet cake from Costco?" Yeah, it is. And he's like, "Wait, I know you." I'm like, "How? How do you know me?" That's funny.
How is this possible?
Yeah.
We are doing the mailbag today. We usually do it Wednesday.
Yes.
We're doing it today because Notre Dame women's basketball coach Neil Ivey is going to be on tomorrow's show.
Excitement.
I was trying to schedule the interviews for Tuesday as much as possible, but they've got camp going on, so a lot of things going on over there right now. So fortunately, she squeezed us in for tomorrow. So I'll be talking to her tomorrow, and a lot of stuff to talk about with all the additions to the team. We've even got a little women's basketball and rapid fire coming up later on.
I mean, she's basically got a new team. I mean, more or less, top to bottom, when you look at the roster from this year to last year, I mean, it's basically a brand new team. So she's got to get to know her team and how things are going to look and work and all that fun stuff. So she's got a lot going on right now.
That's right. So that'll be coming up on tomorrow's show. And it's also looking like Mr. Carter Carls, our old friend, formerly from the South Bend Tribune, who's covering Texas A&M football, is going to be on next week as well. We'll talk a little Aggies with Carter next week. Nice. Knock on wood. Hopefully that doesn't fall through.
He's usually good.
I always hesitate to mention him, in case something happens. But he's like with Carter, it can take a little while for him to get back to you, like literally days sometimes. And then he'll go, "Hey, so we're going to do that thing today?" After he never said yes in the first place. So he did say yes, and we kind of halfway pinned down a day and time to do it. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah. Well, he's usually good for it. He's always a good interview. He knows his Texas A&M.
A lot of good stuff. A lot of good stuff.
I'm sure the Aggies are going to be out for revenge this year.
Right. Exactly. So I'm only throwing this up there because it's a recruiting question. Justin asked, besides Golden, who else is Notre Dame targeting for defensive line? You were just in a show with Brian. So has defensive line come up in any of the shows that you've done?
Sure didn't.
All right.
There was a couple of commitments today, but neither one of them were defensive linemen. And I want to say the answer is no, but I don't know that for sure. And so I don't want to, get out there with it because I just don't know enough about the recruiting landscape and the board and all of those different things. So I don't know is the short answer. So yeah, that's where I'm at.
Okay.
Sorry.
Right. I'll throw another one up there. I think, we can kind of talk about this a little bit more because it pertains more to Notre Dame's future as opposed to specific guys in the class. But Notre Dame has 6 offensive linemen in this class, which I have seen as I've looked at Brian's list of who he thinks is going to
end up today.
Yeah.
As of today.
That's right. He committed this afternoon. The 6th one committed this afternoon.
Yes.
So Andre wants to know, do you believe that's too many? Are they worried about injuries or getting as many good players is the goal? What do you think about the fact 6 offensive linemen? It's a lot of linemen in one class.
It is a lot of linemen in one class. They usually try to get 5. So, I mean, there's a lot of backstory as to why there's 6. And is it too many? No, it's not too many because of the flux in rosters and all of that. And they do have an additional 10 scholarships that they can give out that they've never had before. And so now they've got that flexibility. And so they're not stuck at 85 anymore. They can go up to 95. And so, it's not as big of a deal if you bring in 1 extra lineman. So they're happy with it. They took a little bit of a flyer on the last kid that just committed, but he really wanted to be at Notre Dame. He's got a high upside, that kind of stuff. And so you take your chances on somebody like that. And if it doesn't work out, they can always transfer someplace else. That's the world that we live in now.
Right.
And so it's okay to kind of pack it up at the beginning and then let the chips fall where they may as you move forward.
Well, I mean, look, like Joe says, people transfer, but if you look at this year's offensive line and kind of where they are, they're all, with the exception of Knapp, they're all pretty much upperclassmen, like going into their 3rd season at Notre Dame. So these guys, this is the 2026 class. So these 6 guys will be freshmen next year. And then you pretty much expect with few exceptions, Joe Alt and Knapp are 2 of the, very few exceptions to guys starting as freshmen.
Right.
So like you look at most likely a redshirt season in 2026. And then by the time 2027 rolls around and theoretically they're all ready to play, then you're looking at the guys who are going to be starting this year are all most likely going to be gone by the time 2027 rolls around. And these 6 guys who are coming in next year are ready to hit the ground and actually play. So can see it. Obviously they've got some other talented guys, in classes below these guys, but yeah. And I think as you laid it out there with the extra scholarships they've got available, it's going to be interesting to kind of see what positions they address with some of these, extra spots now. And I mean, the class is already at 20 and it could freaking end up, close to 30 by the time it's all said and done, if they keep adding the kind of quality that they're adding right now.
I mean, I want to address this one from Josh. He says, are they doing away with walk-ons? They are not doing away with walk-ons because they are only going to 95 and you can have 105 on the roster, and everything got grandfathered in for this year too. So they're never going to, well, I shouldn't say never. They're not going to have 105 because then that has implications with Title IX and everything else. So if you've got 10 more scholarships at Notre Dame, that means there needs to be 10 more scholarships on the female side of things in other sports. And so 10 more really is 20 more scholarships, and Notre Dame is not going that route. So they have 95 scholarships, so they've got 10 additional than they ever have before. And then the walk-ons, they're technically walk-ons, right? So the 10 other guys, or in this case, probably more like 20 right now, they are walk-ons. Now, they do get NIL money, and they do get assistance, and they are probably not paying for school. It is just not a football scholarship, okay? So they have ways of taking care of those kids, but right now, those are not technically scholarship players. Those are walk-ons.
That's the cool thing about, especially with football, like with NIL right now, even the walk-ons can get something, in terms
100%
of extra cash.
And Marcus Freeman basically said that. He's like, if walk-ons need help, we're going to help them. You know what I mean? And so there are kids out there that don't need the help, right? I mean, there's plenty of kids out there that they can go to Notre Dame, parents can pay the bill. It's not a big deal, right? But then there's other kids that will need the help, and they can help if necessary. But it sounds like once they get to the strict 105 roster limit, 10 of those will be walk-ons at Notre Dame. They're not going to increase in the near future from 95. So there will be 10 walk-on spots moving forward. Right now, there's more than that. There's like 120 kids, 115 kids, whatever it is. But once they get to that stringent 105, they're not going above 95.
Right.
Yeah. So I just want to throw that out there.
Nope. Good explanation. Good explanation. Joe asks, after the quarterback battle is done, how and would you try to convince the backup not to transfer? If you can't, how would you try to convince him to stay through the playoffs?
Well, I think, first of all, he can't transfer until we don't even know what the transfer window is, right? So it could be in December, it could be in January, it could be
whatever. He can't technically transfer, but he could do what Jaden Mickey did last year and just leave the team and stay in school.
Yeah, definitely
to preserve the season of eligibility.
Yeah. Right. Yes, that's a possibility. And yeah, you have a conversation with them about that. But both of these guys know going in, one's going to win the battle and one's going to lose the battle. This is not like a big surprise, and so I think they know what's in front of them. And they probably had this conversation about what this looks like if one wins and one doesn't, and what that looks like. And so I don't think, look, you're always going to have to re-recruit everybody on your roster. That's just the day and age that we live in. So yes, you are re-recruiting the backup quarterback, no doubt about that. And you talk to him about not transferring in the middle of a playoff run and all of those different things. And that's where are you going to, let's say it is CJ Carr, are you going to get Kenny Minchey involved in a package or whatever so that he can actually play and all of those types of things? Because right now, Kenny Minchey doesn't have a year to sit out. He already used his red shirt.
Exactly.
So unless he gets hurt, might as well play the season out. You know what I mean? And so it's a little bit different of a scenario because he already used his red shirt. So he's a freshman right now.
Yeah, I mean, I think the character of these two guys, like,
Agreed.
I don't expect the guy who loses this battle to just say, okay, I'm packing it up. I'm done. I'm leaving the team now. Like, I don't expect that to happen. Now, what happens after this season, though, is a completely different story because both of these guys have multiple years of eligibility remaining. So whoever loses this battle is presumably, like if things go the way the team thinks that they're going to go and number one stays number one all year and you don't have any quarterback controversies over the course of the season and you don't have injuries and things like that, there will be a decision to make at the end of the season. And at that point, to be quite honest, I would expect whoever is number two at the end of the season to go someplace else where they can play. Yeah. Like, that's what I would expect because
agreed.
Like, especially if it's Minchie because he's a year older than Carr, because he would most likely have a degree in hand by that point. He might have to finish out, like the spring semester or whatever.
Yeah. Just depends on how that
he'll be close to finishing his degree and all that, and like we still don't know exactly what I think there's still going to be a winter portal.
He'll only have been here for 2 years. He's a sophomore.
Minchie?
Yeah.
Minchie? Sophomore eligibility. This will be
he's a freshman eligibility.
But he's a year older than Carr, who's going into his sophomore season.
Yeah, you're right. He will have been here for 3 years. Wow, time flies.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right. You are absolutely right.
Yeah.
Yep. So after 3 years, 3 full years, he'll probably have to stay till May.
And look, at that point, you've already got Blake Hebert. You've got Noah Grubbs coming in.
Right.
That's what you expect. You expect there's going to be some attrition at this position because you keep recruiting really good quarterbacks. And we've talked about this before. It can't be hit and miss, we hit with this one. Now we're going to settle, for like a low 4, high 3-star type of guy, that kind of thing. Like the recruiting at the position is what it's supposed to be now. And you expect that there are going to be some guys who are not going to finish their first, their 4 full years here because of the fact that you're going to have really good guys competing for that job year in and year out.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And they kind of have recruited that way, kind of an every other year kind of a deal, but they're bringing in good kids every year. So, there's going to be attrition. That's just the world we live in now. There will never be, I shouldn't say never, because I don't want to paint myself into a corner, but rare will it be that you have 4 scholarship quarterbacks on the roster at once, freshman, sophomore, junior, senior. Like, that is going to be a very rare occasion. And it's rare enough that it's not happening this year. They've got 3, you know what I mean? And that's why we just saw today that Tyler Buckner's number is now number 10. He's still listed as a wide receiver on the roster, but I think we all anticipate they're probably going to move him over. So they're going to have 3 scholarship quarterbacks and 2 walk-on quarterbacks essentially in that room, I think is what it's going to end up being.
Yeah.
And that's going to be the reality. You're going to have to supplement your scholarship quarterbacks with walk-ons for depth purposes. It's the way it's going to be.
Yeah. Josh is looking for some clarification with the roster stuff that you were talking about. He says, so they're going to 95 scholarships with 10 walk-ons. Yes, correct. That's what Vince was saying.
Yeah,
but I don't know. But 105-man roster limit going forward. Yes, there will be, but again,
I don't know when that starts officially.
Part of this, the grandfathering, part of what took the House settlement so long to get figured out is the judge wanted grandfathering in for the players who were already around. So I think.
Do they have the whole time to graduate?
I think that this year, they'll probably be over 105 because of the grandfathering thing. It's like you can't just be kicked off if you were already on the roster.
Right. But how long does that last? Like if that was a sophomore,
I think it's just this year, but I'm not positive.
Yes, I'm not sure either. Eventually they're going to,
there's no sense getting hung up in that because again, anyone over that number is going to be a walk-on anyway.
Correct.
So
eventually it's going to be the hard 105, the hard cap at 105.
Yeah.
Notre Dame has said they're going to stick at 95 and then 10 walk-ons. So yeah.
Mark wants to know, with the rev share / NIL dollars, do you see more parents allowing high school / grade school kids to pursue football that were lost to concussion concerns? I think this is a really good question.
It's a fascinating question.
Yeah.
I can safely say my son played football, obviously, but he did not play a position where he got hit.
Did he?
There's a reason for that. Honestly, my wife did not really. Now, if he really wanted to play, he would have played, but she was much more okay with him being a kicker than an actual football player. And I did just now call my son not an actual football player. I give him a hard time about that all the time. But I don't know if, that's really hard to say. Like, I have never made a decision for my kids.
Because even though there weren't dollars, direct dollars coming to players, there were still, full ride scholarships.
Correct. 100%.
So that was still the carrot out there. And anyone who got that full ride saw that as their entry point to an opportunity to have a chance to play in the NFL.
Right. And that's only at the high D1 level too, by the way. Yes, there is. I think there's going to be rev share at at the group of 5 level, but it's going to be a much smaller number. And then when you get to D1 AA, D2, D3, that doesn't exist at all. So, when you see those numbers, Sean, they always tell the kids these numbers, right? It's okay, there's X amount of high school players, and then X amount of kids go to this level of college and this level of college, and then X amount go to the NFL. Is the number bigger that are going to get money out of playing football than it used to be because it used to just be in the NFL? Yes. It's still a pretty minute number. How many people does everybody know that went to a high Division I school? You know what I mean? That number is still very small. And so as a parent, I'm not making that decision for a 6th grader. Be like, oh, there's a chance for you to make some NIL money. I'm going to have you just play football. Mark, I still think it's a great question because there's going to be plenty of parents that will say that.
Yeah.
I'm not one of those parents. I don't think you're one of those parents. And I think the majority of people are not those parents. But I think those parents that would make that decision are also making decisions for their kids that are probably not best for their kids in the first place.
Yeah, but single moms out there.
Oh, I've seen it.
Raising a kid. I don't doubt it because there were some single moms I've worked for, or not for, but with before, who thought that they had the next Michael Jordan, and
they were wrong 99% of the time.
Yeah, barely made the sophomore high school team.
Right.
But they all thought that was the ticket.
Honestly, I've seen it the opposite way, Mark. I've seen a kid who has a D1 offer, is offered NIL money, and has basically just stopped doing school. You know what I mean? Because they think that, oh no, I'm set.
They've made it now.
And they haven't. And that's probably going to get pulled. You know what I mean? That kind of thing. I've seen those kinds of things happen more so than the other way around. It's giving these kids a false sense of security a little too early, in my opinion. And that's the negative side of it at the high school level. Yeah. You know what I mean? So we'll see.
Then Joe says his son got a concussion in a soccer game. So plenty of other, and I think concussions among female soccer players are the leading, in terms of sports in America. I think that is the leading cause of concussions is concussions among female soccer players. If I remember, the
soccer
that I've seen,
there's more concussions in soccer than there is in football. Period. Right. That's just a fact. And my kid played soccer forever.
But we're not doing studies about, headers and, all that kind of stuff.
And soccer has changed the rules. You can't head the ball until you're almost in high school now. They don't allow it.
Oh, really? They don't even allow them to do it in the youth stuff anymore.
Yeah,
huh?
They pretty much.
Why don't they just make them wear one of those?
The Guardian helmets?
Things? Yeah.
The Guardian thing?
Well, not the guard, but you know what I'm talking about. Don't they have, isn't it kind of a.
Oh, that rugby
players
players
a pad
wear.
That they wear, something
and
that.
7-on-7 kids wear those kinds of things.
Yeah,
you could.
It basically protects your forehead?
Yeah, I've seen those. Yeah, you could definitely do that.
I'm surprised they don't mandate them at the high school level and just, or even at some of the youth levels. And
yeah, they completely banned heading the football or the soccer ball until I can't remember what the age is because it kept changing as my kid was coming through. They would change it right at his level every time. And so he wasn't allowed to head for a long time.
It's I'm old enough to where the drinking age used to be 18 and then all the states started upping it. And in Kansas, where I was, they changed it right before I turned 18. And then I had to wait 3 more years.
Of course they did.
Got me again.
That's
legally
fantastic.
Anyway. Joe says, if Notre Dame had to join a conference, would you rather have them play 8 or 9 conference games without the championship game?
All right. So just saying that this is accurate, that they joined a conference, would I rather them do 8 or 9? I'd rather them do 8 so that you have more flexibility in your scheduling. And with Notre Dame, the way that they have, like, with their history and, their games spanning multiple conferences that they want to keep and they want to play, the more open slots you have, the better. So I would say 8. If you're forcing me in a conference, that's what I would do. I would vote.
Yeah, I mean, that would basically be like the last little kind of thing that you had if you're Notre Dame, if you were forced to join a conference, is that extra non-conference game. I guess it depends on what conference you're in as well. I mean, if you go to the Big Ten, you're going to have 9 conference games.
Right.
I don't think the ACC has pushed it to 9 yet, have they? The SEC is obviously still trying to figure theirs out. Let me see. Let me check an ACC schedule here real quick and see if they've got 9 or not.
Josh is saying it's 8.
So I'm looking at Louisville. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yep. 8 for the ACC still.
Okay.
I would go with 8.
8
would be my choice.
Yeah, 8's more than enough.
But you've got conferences like the Big Ten who are pushing for, like they think because they're playing 9, everyone else is supposed to be playing 9 because they still think that their schedule is tougher than everybody else's, which it's not. So it really doesn't matter. That's right, Joe. Back in the 3-2 beer days. Oh my.
What is that?
3.2% alcohol.
Oh,
it's like
gotcha.
The stuff that you could go to the grocery store and buy. Like whereas you go to the liquor store, they had the higher percentage.
Gotcha.
But yeah. 3-2. I got the 3-2 flu. Let me see. Joseph. I know there was some Arkansas conversation, by the way, in the show that you guys did this afternoon. Joseph says, Vince, could you envision Arkansas making a run at Tommy Rees? Should they part ways with Sam Pittman? If TR was considered for the North Carolina head coaching job prior to hiring Belichick?
It's a great question, Joseph. I think let's see how he does with the circus of quarterbacks and whatnot that he has to deal with in Cleveland. I think that could go a long way to deciding whether he may be ready to run his own program or not. I'm still not convinced that Tommy Rees wants to be a head coach in college. I realize he did the interviewing. I understand that completely. Sometimes you just do that for the experience. You do it to, pad the resume and, that kind of a deal. I don't know. I don't see him getting an SEC head coaching job right off the bat, but it's Arkansas. So that's like a mid-tier SEC team. And we talked about Arkansas and where they should be in the pecking order of the SEC. And we all kind of said it should be 8 or 9 wins in that neighborhood on a regular basis. And then every once in a while you tick up to that 10 or 11 and then back down to like 8 or 9. Problem is they've been hovering around the 500 mark over the last few years. So, it's possible. Tommy Rees is a name, believe it or not. And I do think he's a smart coach. I don't know that he's ready to be a head coach. And I never felt like he had an opportunity to actually get the North Carolina head coaching job. I felt like that was more of a, let's bring him in, see where he's at, that kind of a thing. So I would be surprised if he got that kind of a head coaching job right off the bat. I would be.
Yeah, I think that Tommy Rees's goal is to be an NFL head coach. It's why he made the move to be, went from Alabama offensive coordinator to tight end coach last year. And 1 year later, he's already the offensive coordinator. And it kind of seemed like, just listening to him and, hearing some other things, when he was still here at Notre Dame. NFL was something, remember like when he came to the press conference and he talked about he had watched like every NFL game from the previous season, like he had, like went through and watched, every NFL game. I think he wants to be an NFL coach. He had a lot of NFL concepts in his stuff. Now, Could Arkansas make a run at Tommy Rees? Sure. I think a lot of schools kind of in that sort of mid-tier would be interested in Tommy Rees because of the background that he has and as young as he is and everything else. But that doesn't mean that Rees is necessarily going to be interested in them. But at the same time, to your point about interviewing at North Carolina, you got to interview for a head coaching position, just like Al Washington. Like you've been through that process now. So like even though it's a college job, it still helps prepare you for, whatever opportunity. You've been through that process before. So that's just good experience that you get from going through that.
I would say based on the way, and I was corrected today and I was told that Arkansas is a basketball school, and I don't disagree with that. But the way they went out and got Calipari as a head coach, I would say they're going to throw a bunch of money at a name if they end up going to a new head coach. I just feel like Jerry Jones is getting a little bit more involved, and I just feel like they're going to throw more money at a name than they would at a guy who has no head coaching experience. That's just my take on the situation.
That's interesting. Arkansas is a basketball school. I mean, they haven't been like
back
really good at basketball for 30 years. Like literally, like 40 minutes of hell, like that's the last time that they were really good at basketball. They obviously won a national championship, but I think they consider themselves more a football school than
so there you go.
School.
So that even cements my thought even more. If they're going to throw the kind of money that they did at John Calipari to come in here and be their basketball coach, then what are they going to do when there's a football coach opening? That's my point. I don't think they don't back up the Brinks truck for Tommy Rees.
No, not by any means.
Yeah.
Not by any means. Dude says S Mike McCarthy with a laughing emoji. Oh, that would be something. I don't think Mike McCarthy could cut it at the college level myself. Joe Allen, with all the talk on how the wide receiver room should be more productive this year, what would be your standard for you to be convinced of this projection?
So, are we looking for a stat here, Joe? Look, I just want the wide receivers to show up every game and be productive. It doesn't need to be, we need 2,000-yard receivers or, whatever, benchmark number-wise. I don't want the receivers to disappear in big moments, right? And that's kind of been the case. Now, part of that is who's throwing them the football. I'll be the first one to admit that. But the wide receivers need to be able to show up when it matters. So that's where I'm at.
I think that's a good standard. It doesn't have to be stats by any means, but I do think that a 100-yard game for a receiver shouldn't be something that happens once every millennium, which
100%, yes.
Which obviously until Jaden Greathouse at the end of the season, it's like, okay, we've got a full season again, no 100-yard receivers. You should consistently, it doesn't have to be the same guy, but you should consistently, as a college offense in the 21st century, every week, have one of your receivers pushing to be somewhere around 100 yards, depending on who you're playing. That's a very minimal statistical marker because that's a gauge, obviously, that you're having a really productive game if you're around that mark. And Mike says, if I can get it, we have to have a 1,000-yard receiver.
Agreed. Yeah, no, I agree that they need to get to that number. No doubt about it. They need to get to that number. I'm with you there.
We shouldn't have to be talking about, man, are the receivers finally going to, is he finally going to get it downfield this game? All that kind of stuff that we've been talking about for years now. Because even with Sam Hartman, it was a challenge at time. We didn't think it was going to be as much of a challenge with Hartman because of all the passing yards that he put up. And look at his career numbers. But I just, with him, I feel like that the transition from that slow mesh and, into a more pro style offense, I think that was ultimately a bigger challenge than we thought it was probably going to be.
Yeah, no doubt. And I want to know Like, I don't have to know for a fact that we're going to have a 1,000-yard receiver. I want to see in games 1 and 2 that the receivers are making plays. You know what I mean? Like,
the receivers are just an active part of
Right.
every week's game plan. And, like success on the field, the receivers are always going to be a part of it. They shouldn't, they shouldn't just be window dressing.
Correct.
There. Like I talked yesterday about benefit versus feature. Like the wide receivers should be a feature, not just a benefit.
100%. Yeah, that's a great way to put it. Absolutely. And they need to be a threat. Like the wide receivers need to be a threat. The passing game needs to be a threat. And it hasn't been for a long time.
Yeah. Mark has got a couple baseball questions. Do you think Major League Baseball should hold the All-Star Game every year on July 4th instead of mid-July as it does presently?
No, because I don't want to be. No, I don't think so. Mid-July is fine, and it's it's a whole week, like a All-Star weekend, like it's multiple days, and I'm cool with it being in the middle of the week or however they normally do it. I'm good with it.
Well, it's typically Monday, Tuesday. Like Monday is the home run derby, Tuesday is the All-Star game.
I'm fine with that. It gives me something to do on a Tuesday night. You know what I mean? Like I don't want to I don't want to use my holiday to watch the All-Star game. I would rather have the All-Star game be something additional. That's, look, the All-Star game's on. I'm going to throw that on. You know what I mean? Like 4th of July is to be out and about. It's beautiful weather, that kind of a thing.
Like when I saw this, I'm like, oh, that's a pretty novel idea. But then you think about it, it's like this is the summer holiday, the 4th of July. People are out. Like it's going to be a 3-day weekend this year because the 4th is on a Friday.
No, that's right.
So like you want your 3-day weekend,
right.
And so I think what Major League Baseball needs to do, as opposed to necessarily the All-Star game on the 4th of July, even though, again, I think it's an interesting idea to do it because I hadn't really thought about it. And like, you would definitely, put it. I just feel like people are doing too many other things on the 4th of July. But
yes, agreed.
Like I think Memorial Day, the 4th of July, and Labor Day, all three of those holidays are during the baseball season. I think that whoever gets the next national broadcasting contract, whether it's NBC or whoever else, I think that on those holidays, like you should have at least a triple header, if not a quadruple header of Major League Baseball games throughout the day on national TV. Like make an event out of those holidays with like national NBA TV because they're all playing on the 4th anyway, on those holidays anyway.
They are
season. So like national broadcasts on those 3 holidays.
I dig it.
That's what I would say.
I dig it. Yeah. Baseball needs to cash in on that a little bit. Like all the other sports have, right? Football's on Thanksgiving, football's on Christmas, the NBA's on Christmas. Like, the college football is on New Year's. You know what I mean? So like all these other sports are capitalizing on it. But come on, baseball, get your stuff together. Let's go. Yeah.
Mark also wants to know, at what age is it appropriate to teach pitchers to throw a curveball or breaking balls to avoid arm damage or protect batters from wild pitches? Bonus, how well could you hit a curveball?
Okay. Number one, if you want to protect your kid from curveballs and all that, don't let him play travel ball because that will kill your kid's arm in a heartbeat if he's a pitcher. So I'm fine with curveball. And obviously, Sean, you are a head coach. You can speak to this as well. And your son played college baseball. Personally, I think you can start teaching them in middle school. And I think you'd be fine at that point because you can't start teaching them in high school. I mean, I know some people have waited.
They need to have it by the time they go.
You got to have it.
If you're going to be a high school pitcher, you've got to have a curveball by then.
That's exactly right. So one of two things: I'm teaching him in middle school, and then I am monitoring his innings when he's in travel ball. Because look, if you want to play baseball in high school at a competitive level, you got to do travel. That's just the way the world works nowadays. So, but I'm monitoring his innings. Like if he's a pitcher, I'm monitoring his innings. That's the biggest issue is overuse.
Yeah,
right now.
Like when Jesse was playing travel ball, we would go to these tournaments, and as they got older, like pros and cons of every coach, right? But so it would typically be, depending on how big the tournament was, you would either start on Thursday or Friday, and then of course the tournament would be done Saturday. You'd have your championship game. And
right.
So we had a pretty good team. Like by the time Jesse was like, I think it was around his junior year in high school, or like that summer going into his senior year, maybe something like that. But they had a couple kids that were pretty legit. And this one kid who ended up pitching in the Padres organization, he pitched for the Fort Wayne Tin Caps a few years back, and kind of advanced it. Like, they would start him on Friday in the first game, and they would bring him back on Sunday and start him again in the championship game. And it's like, okay, great, we won a couple tournaments, but like, does anybody even remember the name of the tournament 10 years later? Like, and you're risking your arm for that. And as a coach, like, you can look at yourself in the mirror. Like, I was not the one, I was an assistant coach on that. I was not the head coach. So like, that's not something that I would have done, because you're literally probably going to have him throw at least 80, if not, upwards of 100 pitches in that first game Saturday. And then you're going to ask him to turn around and do the same thing on Sunday.
On one day's rest.
Yeah. And that's the bigger issue for me. But like, personally, I think the underrated thing, especially like everyone talks about curveballs and sliders and all that kind of stuff. If you can control your fastball and you have a changeup, that goes much farther.
Agreed.
Like that's what we were trying to do, is like teach our kids changeups in high school, and they're all, just let me throw my curveball. It's like, this is better for you, and you can actually get more outs this way if you can throw these two pitches consistently, because they look exactly the same, but you're talking about 10 to 12 miles an hour, difference in the velocity that's coming up there. Teach the kid all a changeup is a looser grip, on
more fingers on the ball.
Yeah, a little more fingers, a looser grip. That's really all it takes. Teach the kid fastball changeup when he's growing up, and then if he's good enough and he's still pitching when he gets to middle school, then he's learning the curveball.
Right.
And then he's got 3 pitches there. And most high school pitchers are lucky if they have 2 that they can control.
That's exactly right. It's not necessarily, the throwing of the curveball. It's the amount of times he's throwing the curveball and amount of I've seen way too many Tommy John surgeries in high school. Let's just put it that way, because these kids are just getting absolutely wrecked because of all the innings that they throw in travel ball. Because, these coaches latch on to this one kid who's a stud, because every team's got a stud, right? And they just latch on to that kid, and he does exactly what you said, and they end up with arm problems and elbow problems and all these different things, and it's just not good.
Yeah.
And,
I mean, I remember we had this was in high school when I was coaching. We had a season opener. We were down early. We like made a couple pitching changes, and then all of a sudden, we rally, we're ahead. But by the time we get to the 7th inning, the guy who came in relief and we're ahead now, he's already thrown over 100 pitches, and, so like you've got guys, so it's like, well, we got to make a pitching change. This is game 1 and it's cold outside.
Right.
I can't just, and then so everyone's mad at old coach because he took the guy out who was having some success and brought these other guys in, and we end up losing a game. And it's like, well, you're gonna risk like the kid's future and the rest of the season because of one game. So what, you're gonna have him go out there and literally throw 130, 140 pitches right away? Like, sorry.
Yeah, no, not. You have to be smarter than that, and you have to be looking out for it's the whole point of youth sports, because guess what? High school is still youth sports. You have to be looking out for the student athlete 100%. You've got to just be smarter than that. It's not all about wins and losses, man. It's just not,
Yep.
10 years down the line, when that kid sees you at like a wedding reception or something, his arm's just hanging down to his side, or he's actually able to play with his kids. You know what I mean? Like, there's a difference, and they will thank you at the end. They will thank you for not wrecking their arm and their elbow and everything else down the line. So
Andy Saylor wants to know, with all the additions to the Notre Dame women's basketball team, what's the expectation for team's performance this year? It seems they could go either way depending on how well the coaches do. Neil Ivy's going to be on tomorrow. Haven't had a chance to see him in person yet. And even if I, did, like, Hannah Hidalgo's not over there with them right now because she's working with Team USA out in Colorado Springs. I know this sounds maybe like a cop-out, but I'm just in wait and see mode right now because there's just a lot of things that have to happen over the course of this season. They've added, some good veteran players. Vanessa De Jesus, who we're going to talk about here in a second. I'm hearing some in rapid fire, hearing some good things about her. I mean, honestly, I think the question is going to be probably what happens in the front court. Andre's asking, do the women have bigs 6'4" or taller? Yes, the transfer from Kansas State is the tallest.
Yes, and
tallest player. She is 6'4".
There's three that sit at 6'3" according to the roster because I just looked it up. Malaya Cowles, Cass Prosper, Bella Tarani, are all listed at 6'3".
Now Tarani is a walk-on, so
okay. Yeah, she's still listed at 6'3". She can get in there and bang. Right?
Yeah, Gisela Sanchez, the Kansas State transfer, is the only player 6'4" or bigger. So
okay.
I think they're going to rely a lot more on defense this year, just kind of based on the composition of this roster. And I think we'll let Neil Ivey answer some of these questions.
I was going to say, tomorrow. She's going to be the one with the answers.
There's a lot that we're going to talk about.
And
talk to her tomorrow.
To be perfectly honest with you, she probably doesn't know all those answers because she hasn't really had a whole lot of time with this structure.
They've been together for like 3 weeks.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think there's a lot to learn from both ends of things. You know what I mean? For they have to learn her and she has to learn them. And there's a lot there.
Vince, are you ready for rapid fire?
Let's go.
All right. So, interesting question to start us off today. Someone asked Stuart Mandel of The Athletic this question in his most recent mailbag. So, here's the question that this guy asked Mandel. Assuming Julian Sayin from Ohio State and CJ Carr of Notre Dame are named starters for their respective teams, which supporting cast would you prefer for a first-time starting quarterback? Ohio State, with the best receiver duo in the country in Jeremiah Smith and Carnell Tate, with a good tight end, Max Clare, but several new starters along the offensive line. Or the best running back in the country, Jeremiah Love, and nearly an entire returning offensive line, but questionable wide receivers. So that is the question that Mandel was asked. Sayin or Carr, which supporting cast would you prefer? How do you respond to this, Vince?
So I was trying to remove myself from being a Notre Dame fan and being an Ohio State hater. That's important to this because I didn't want to just pick the Notre Dame situation over the Ohio State situation. So I tried to look at it as a coach and just remove all names associated with this whole thing, right? So It's just a random starting quarterback. What supporting cast would you want to have, okay? As a coach, I want the proven offensive line and the run game. That's what I want because that is the best thing you can have for a new quarterback. And if you're starting quarterback, at Ohio State or Notre Dame, I would hope that you can throw the ball to some receivers. But I also know that you can hand off to Jeremiah Love or you could hand off to Jadarian Price, the best 1-2 punch in the country, by the way. And you're going to be in good shape behind that offensive line. And when you do drop back to pass, you're going to be protected and you're going to have time to throw to those questionable receivers or that questionable receiving core, as the question says. So I would rather have the offensive line in the run game as opposed to the elite wide receivers who maybe I don't have time to get them the football. That would not be good. Doesn't matter what you got on the outside if you don't have time to get them the football.
I agree. That's what I would start with. Marcus Freeman has always talked about we're an O-line, D-line driven team. And to have the kind of returners that Notre Dame has on that line and the kind of running backs that you have in the backfield, I think that can go a long way. And if you're the kind of, if you're a good enough quarterback, it's always the chicken and the egg. Does the quarterback make the receiver? Does the receiver, it's great to have elite wide receivers. Everybody wants them. Notre Dame obviously wants them. Notre Dame fans want them. But I do think that, you don't necessarily have to be an elite receiver if you've got a great quarterback who can lean on a run game and, have the protection of an offensive line. The quarterback can make those guys look pretty good with the throws. Now, to Mandel's credit, he did point out a couple of different things. One, Ohio State's offensive line is not quite as dire as maybe this question made it out to be. They do have their 3 returning. Basically, Ohio State's in the same situation Notre Dame was in last year. You return the interior guys, but they're missing the 2 tackles. So that's what they've got to replace. And they did bring in a pretty highly sought after tackle from Rice, who's going, from in the transfer portal. And he also pointed out that Jaden Greathouse finished the season with back-to-back 100-yard games last year and is on the upside. And then the fact that they added Malachi Fields as well. So he pointed out that, Notre Dame's wide receivers aren't necessarily, air quotes, questionable.
Agreed. So, it's not as black and white as that question makes it out to be.
They might lack the production and the flash that guys like Smith and Tate have at Ohio State. But
those guys are legit. They have proven that they are elite wide receivers, no doubt about it. And look, if you're a quarterback, you probably want to have those elite receivers because they're going to make you look real good, So I would be curious to hear what the quarterbacks would say they would prefer. I know what I would prefer as a coach, but I am curious to hear what a actual quarterback in a actual honest moment, you know what I mean? Because obviously Julian Sain's going to choose Ohio State, and CJ Carr is going to choose Notre Dame, right? But I'm very curious to see what they would choose.
Tommy says at least Notre Dame's receivers didn't go 0 in a playoff game. Very good point.
Can't argue that.
Nope.
Penn State.
So Vince, if CJ Carr is Notre Dame's starter, is he more likely to pass for 3,000 yards or throw 30 touchdown passes?
You're trying to get me to predict numbers.
I know.
Which I am admittedly terrible at. But I believe in my bold predictions, I did say that whoever the starting quarterback would be would throw for 3,000 plus, which would put him in the top 10 all time in single season throwing history. Because I believe 9 and 10 are both like 2,900 or 2,800 or something like that. So that would be a top 8 performance all time. But I do feel like they will rack up some numbers here and be able to hit the yardage. So I'm going to go yardage on this one and say 3,000.
That's where I am as well, because I think you do still have those running backs to lean on. And you would expect that Love and Price are probably going to combine for somewhere between 25 and 30 touchdown runs of their own. When you look at where the touchdowns are coming from. And so, so like you can still pass your way downfield and then end up, running back like Jeremiah Love or Jadarian Price or, whoever, Aeneas Williams ends up in the end zone. It just feels like 30 is a little bit too much in your first season, but I think 3,000 yards is very doable with the kind of passer that Carr is and for the kind of offense that this is going to be, and because of the fact that you should feel confident about these receivers as well.
Well, we talked about the fact that early on in the season, I mean, what self-respecting defensive coordinator is not going to put a game plan together to stop Notre Dame's run game? Like, they're going to be focused on Notre Dame's run game. And that's going to allow whoever the quarterback is to throw the ball around a little bit and force the defense to loosen up and, treat the wide receivers and the tight ends and all the pass catchers with respect, and whoever the quarterback is with respect. But they're going to have some opportunities. I think the first half of the season, Notre Dame quarterbacks are going to have some opportunities to put up some numbers. And now I also think the run game is going to put up numbers regardless of what defensive coordinators are going to do. But at the same time, the door is going to be open for the quarterback to make some plays. And there should be some fireworks.
Yeah. And, let's be honest, like the schedule is respectable, but there are enough games where,
for sure,
again, if it's Carr, where he should be able to feast, I think, against some of the secondaries he's going to face. So that's if Carr is the starter. If Kenny Minchey is the starter, where would you put his over-under numbers for passing yards and touchdown passes?
So I'm going to stick to my guns, and I'm going to say that no matter who the thrower is, whoever's throwing the ball is going to get 3,000. So I'm sticking with that. That's the spot.
Okay.
Is 3,000. Okay. As far as passing touchdowns, that's a little bit harder. Do you have a number at the top of your head for touchdowns passed?
I'm right around 19 and a half, I think, is where I'd put it.
Okay.
That's kind of what I'm thinking. That's like I think Drew Pine had 22, so maybe it could be even a little bit higher now that I think about it. But I think 19 and a half for a first-time starting quarterback like Minchie would probably be like, does he get to 20? I think that would be where I would say.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty good solid bet. I would say 20 is a good number. If he got into the 20s, I would be very happy. That 24 would rank 10th all time single season, and that's what Sam Hartman did in 2023.
Mm-hmm.
And then Jack Cohn and Jimmy Clausen are tied at 8 with 25. So, and then it goes up incrementally, right? 24, sure. 25, 26, 27, and with Brady Quinn having the most ever at 37. So, anything over 20, I think, would be a success, especially like you said with this running game.
I have I have Minchie's passing yards a little bit lower. I have him I would set the over under at 24.99. I think. Like, does he get to 2,500? Because as I said yesterday, he's still more a pocket passer than a runner, but at the same time, he will have some of his own, running yards over the course of the season to go along. So I think that his passing numbers would be a little bit lower. Like, if he's the guy over a full season, he's going to have more rushing yards than CJ Carr.
So I definitely agree with you.
I think that would eat some of that up.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah, like Scott's asking, are we talking the whole season, including any playoff games? I mean,
I'm talking the whole season.
Statistics do apply to playoff games, but obviously we don't know how many playoff games.
Right. So it's speculation on our part, obviously.
So it's more. We're more or less talking about minimum 13 games.
Yeah.
It's kind of how I would look at it. Your regular season plus whatever bowl game you end up in, or at least one playoff game is kind of how I would look at it.
The whole thing, the whole kit and caboodle.
Yeah. So, Vince, there is debate going on right now around college football about possibly going back to a BCS-like computer model to do the rankings rather than the committee, like they have had, do the rankings in the college football playoff era, whether it's 4 teams or 12 teams like last year. Do you buy or sell going back to computer ratings?
It's a big sell for me. College football is, I guess it's similar to baseball, even though baseball is getting even more involved with the replay and the robo umps and all these different things that they're talking about. But just the human error of college football, I'm not ready to get rid of that. And I didn't like the computer rankings back in the BCS. It was just very sterile, and I didn't like it. I like the debate. There's no debate when there's computers. It's whatever the stupid computer spits out. You can't even debate anything with anybody. So
that's true.
I would say, here's what I would do, because look, this is the reality that it is 2025 and we have these things available to us. Okay. I would use it as a benchmark, a point of, we'll use this.
Maybe give it to the committee and say, here's what the computer says.
Yes. But
tweak
it's not
at your, whatever.
It's not the be all end all. You know what I mean? It's a data point. I would use it as a data point, because if I'm on the committee, I want to use every possible piece of data that I can so that I can make the most informed decision. I think that could be a data point. I'm cool with that. I'm just not cool with that being the be all end all.
What if I told you that last year a simulated BCS formula would have given us a very similar set of rankings that the humans ended up with?
Really?
When it was all said and done. Yes, I've found some simulated BCS rankings. What if I told you Notre Dame would have been number 3?
Oh,
in those rankings.
A little buy action. Is that what
you
you're
in on that
telling me?
now? Are you buying?
No,
It would have gone
not.
Oregon, Georgia, Notre Dame, Texas, Ohio State. That would be 1 through 5, and then Penn State, number 6. Interesting.
Penn State.
I think the thing is with the computers is, even though it's a computer and it's, supposed to not have any bias, like, depending on the formula that you write for the computer, like, you can still give it whatever bias you want to give the computer. Like, if you say lean on strength of schedule, it can lean on strength of schedule. And I think that the reason this has become a big topic is because the SEC, like with the automatic bids and stuff like that, and the fact that they've gone back to this potentially a 4, what was it? Or a 5 plus 11, like, instead of the 4 automatic bids, just the top 5 conference champions, and then 11 at-large bids. I think the reason they've gone back to this is, like, they really, for whatever reason, it's because they think that their teams got screwed last year.
Right.
By the selection committee, because of the fact that SMU and Indiana got in and Alabama got left out, even though they had more losses, obviously. But the SEC is trying to say, well, we played, a tougher schedule, so that should have mattered. Well, I don't like. Again, let me look at what the computer last year would have had Alabama at number 11. They would have had SMU at number 12. They also would have had South Carolina at number 14 and Ole Miss at 16. So, like, if you're looking at a 16-team field, I think that's why the SEC is pushing for this, is because they think that the computer would favor their teams. And then in that case, you don't have to worry about the 4 auto bids. We're perfectly fine with the 5 conference champions getting in and then 11 at large. But again, you can still steer the computer in whatever direction that you want. And I like your idea better. You can show the committee, here's how these, whatever this computer, and here's what this computer has been told, like strength of schedule matters here or whatever. Like, give the committee that data, and then the committee still has to make the decision. But
yeah,
the SEC doesn't trust the committee because of what happened last year. So
it's got to be the best of both worlds, right? I think I'm okay with using technology. I'm cool with it to get it right. I just don't want it to be the be all end all.
Well, and I saw somebody say something about AI, and I just saw something, supposedly, like the whole. I hesitate to ask you this. Have you seen any of the Terminator movies? Okay. So basically in Terminator, computers take over the world, Vince, in whatever year it happens to be. Okay. And so the Terminator goes back, and they're trying
I knew there was time travel involved, and yeah. So robots.
So essentially AI took over the world. And I mean, we're not too far off from AI taking over the world right now. So I don't know if I want another computer running college football as well as everything else that they're going to be running here in probably 10 years or less anyway.
Right. So. Yeah. I hear you. You're not surprised. Don't pretend like you're surprised.
Notre Dame women's basketball player Vanessa De Jesus has been named to the Philippine national team. She's going to compete in a World Cup qualifier in China next month. She shared some of the details about what her next several weeks are going to look like at a press conference this morning.
So I leave June 28th, which is this Saturday, to go out and meet the team in the Philippines before we head out to Taiwan for a pre-tournament. It's called the Jones Cup. It will be from July 1st to July 7th. And then from there, we'll go back to the Philippines for a couple of days of training camp before heading to China for the FIBA Asia Cup, which starts on July 13. And then it will go until July 21, July 22, and then I'll come back after that.
So that, Vince, is blank.
It's freaking awesome. That is such a cool opportunity. I don't know her history. I don't know if she's actually from the Philippines or if it's a familial, relationship kind of a deal. Because I know you can be a couple once removed or whatever, and still play for that country. I don't care. You get to represent your country, or you get to represent a country that is, part of your family.
She's
I think
actually
that's awesome.
from California, but obviously
Okay.
her heritage is
Gotcha.
Filipino. So.
I think that's awesome. If I had the opportunity to represent Italy or, you know, the United States in something, I would jump at that opportunity. I think that's really cool.
Yeah. And so, like, what this is, Hannah Hidalgo is in the, you know, she's on Team USA for the FIBA AmeriCup, and they're going to Chile, you know, for their qualifier. And if they get through, then they would qualify for the World Cup. And so DeJesus will be doing the, you know, she'll be with the Filipino team, and she'll be doing the Asia Cup essentially for a chance to qualify for the World Cup. And I think she said that you know, like her country had never qualified for the World Cup before and stuff like that. So it's a big deal for her. And it's, you know, it's like you had Cass Prosper playing for the Canadian Olympic team last year. She's played for Team Canada before. You got Hannah Hidalgo playing for Team USA, and now you've got Vanessa DeJesus as well. And yeah, Lauren Ebo played in the Olympics for another, I can't remember which country she ended up representing, but she was not born there either. It was like the same deal, you know, the heritage and the whole thing. But it's pretty cool. All these players, you know, that they've had doing this, and this is a player who obviously just came in from Duke, and you know, is now going to be playing in some international competition. I went and looked at the travel time, by the way, to get to the Philippines. It's a cool 17-hour flight from South Bend to the Philippines, and that's with no layovers.
I was going to say,
it's going to take her like a day and a half to get from South Bend to the Philippines.
There's no plane going straight from South Bend to the Philippines. I don't care what they call the South Bend International Airport.
No,
you're not going to the Philippines from South Bend. So,
yeah, and then it's another couple hours from the Philippines to Taiwan after, you know, they do their training and all that kind of stuff. So she's going to be busy. That's going to be a lot of flying, a lot of travel, but probably a lot of fun as well to be able to do something like that. Very cool.
That's really cool. Really cool.
Brian Windhorse from ESPN posted a video on social media recently during the NBA Finals. He went into detail about where and how he watches a basketball game that he's covering. He actually travels to the game, but he doesn't sit in the arena, Vince. Instead, he sits in an ESPN workroom and watches the game on his computer and listens to the TV broadcast while he gets fed stats from the ESPN, you know, like stats and notes and all that kind of stuff from the ESPN stats people. What do you think about covering a game that way?
What's the point? Do that from your house. Like, what's the point in going and staying in a hotel and being there? And like the whole point of going to a game, like, for example, when you and I went to the national championship game this past year, I realized that's not just a random NBA game. It's a big deal, but I want to feel what it's like to be there. And if I'm writing a story about it, that goes into the story. It's just like, it's the whole feeling of the arena or the field or wherever you're at covering it. You want to be immersed in it. Like, why would you hide in a closet someplace while there's a game going on? I don't understand that at all.
Why even go through the trouble of the travel and the hotel and the, you know, like the whole thing, if all you're going to do is go sit in a room someplace,
do it at your house,
deep in the bowels of the arena. Yeah, you're better off just sitting there, like you said, in your living room and, you know, sit in your shorts or your boxers or whatever,
right,
and do it that way. I would much rather do that than actually go through all that trouble,
right,
and then sit there and not even see the game. Like the crowd, and it's like it's the NBA Finals, like the crowd and the emotion and the charge and all that. Like,
yes,
like that one, like the, you know, when we were doing games during the pandemic season, like that sucked. You know, I realized there was nobody in the arena, but we were sitting upstairs inside Purcell.
Yep.
And it was hard, you know, it was hard to see up there, especially with a guy, you know, with glasses and the whole thing. And you're just so removed from what's going on down there. Obviously, there wasn't crowd emotion or anything like that. But like the next year, when we got to be courtside again, it's like, count your blessings. Like, here we are. We're back. Yeah. Like, it's just so different, you know, being down there, the ability to be courtside, the, you know, like to see and hear everything can't hear everything, because of the headsets and stuff like that. But
yeah,
still,
but it's
to be
still
that close to the
adds to it.
action. Yeah, exactly.
It means so much more. I mean, even when
Very bizarre.
Even if you're doing a high school game, you know what I mean, and covering a high school game, you want to be able to hear the crowd. Like we would hold a crowd mic like outside so that you could hear the crowd, and the crowd would get me excited when something was like, I don't know. And I realize he's just covering the game. He's not doing like play-by-play and stuff like that. So maybe it's different, but I don't care. I'm there to feel what it's like to be there so that when somebody who's not there reads what I'm writing or listens to a podcast and I'm recounting what it was like to be there, it transports them to that place that they are not. That's the whole point, in my opinion. That's why reporters exist. That's why we do what we do, because we're supposed to make everybody else feel like they're there.
And it's why you go to the games.
And he's not there.
Right.
It's like he's not there.
You're there, but you're not there.
Oh my gosh. I just don't get that at all. Like, I feel like he should throw on like the headphones that like the 2-year-olds wear, just like block out the sound. It's like, is it a sound issue? Is it like, does he can't handle being around people? Like, what's the problem? Why? I need a why to this whole thing.
I don't get it.
Got nothing.
Because, like you'll have your computer out and you'll have the TV broadcast of the game that we're watching, and you'll have like the earbuds in and listen to what they're saying, but you're actually sitting there in the press box watching it live on the field and then hearing what they have to say after
it's more for like replays and things like that.
Exactly. Because you got enough of a delay where you can watch it on the field and then watch it on the computer. So
correct.
Big difference.
Yeah. It's wild.
Fill in the blank. It's blank that ESPN's Field Yates tore a shoulder labrum while hitting a tackling dummy last year to determine his fantasy football draft order.
I can only imagine. I assume he's married. I can only imagine what like his wife said to him when he came home that day. Like, you're an idiot. Like, you're an idiot. Now, I would have done the exact same thing, and I probably would have hurt myself even more because I'm an idiot as well. But I mean, what a dumb move.
But this is also why anyone over 30, regardless of your level of athleticism, you should not. It's a fantasy football draft.
Correct.
You should not be doing any feats of any, physical, like agility, strength, any of this kind of stuff to determine anything to do with your fantasy football draft. Pick a number out of a hat and be done with it.
Right.
Let's stay away from it.
What does a tackling dummy, like, how does that even...
That's what I was trying to figure. Like, how do you maybe how far you push the tackling dummy? I don't know exactly if it was a blocking, like tackling dummy is what I saw it was called. Maybe it was actually a blocking sled. Maybe
like who could?
Maybe they were supposed to see. Yeah, so you could push the sled the farthest or something. I don't know, but it does seem very foolhardy.
That's a major surgery now that has to occur.
I know
because of that.
I know.
It's just wow.
Scott says his boys are 9 and 11. What are your best parenting tips? Oh boy, he's coming to us for parenting tips. It's a struggle, even though they are good and smart kids. The screen time video game thing is sort of a constant issue. Any tips are welcome.
Look, the screen time thing is a daily battle, and I will tell you that my kids are obviously older than that. At the moment, but they've had screens the majority of their lives. They just do. And now you can monitor what they're watching on there and, things of that nature. And I would highly suggest that you do that. I don't know that I buy like the whole, you get 1 hour of TV today. And that doesn't matter to me, but
I watched way too much TV when I was young, but the benefit
it would be the pot calling the kettle black for me.
Benefit is I've seen the Terminator and Terminator 2. Like
touche. Touche to you, sir.
And many other TV shows and movies.
Right. So. You have watched way more than me, so it would really be the pot calling the kettle black for you. That's for sure. Now, when Jesse was growing up, when did he get his first cell phone?
Yeah, see, I'm trying to remember. I think it might have been around middle school or even like freshman in high school. It was around that range. Like by the time he was in high school, iPhones were a thing, but I feel like he really missed out on, like he was probably 3 or 4 years ahead of like what screen time has become now, like with constant, like, we had iPads and stuff like that, but I don't remember him going crazy, and he played video games. I mean, I guess all I would say is, I think Scott's a little league coach is
nice.
Is just try to get him outside and just like that was the thing with Jesse and I is, like we were like from the time he could swing a bat, we were out at the playground and I was throwing him buckets of balls and stuff like that. And we were throwing the football around and, pass routes and, all different, like, so it's like sometimes maybe dad has to, engage as well, but that's good for, for dad and kids is that you're out there, doing it together. I think.
No, 100%. So, completely agree with that. I would say in our house,
without forcing them.
Right. Yeah, you don't. That's a fine line for sure. Right. Like in our house, school is by far number one, and I know it was like that in your house too because Jesse had really, really good grades. So that's number one in our house. Once you get your schoolwork taken care of, okay, now let's talk about privileges and all of those different things. My kids don't have cell phones, and they don't. So that's part of it, and we're weird. And it makes things complicated, but that's kind of where we're at. So, and I make my kids buy their own stuff because it gets more skin in the game. So they actually have cell phones, but they just don't have a number. So they can use them on Wi-Fi and stuff like that, but they bought their own. So they don't lose them and they're not rough with them and things like that because, hey, you break it, you get to buy yourself a new one.
No, that's a good point because like my dad is one of those like always buys the cheap sunglasses, but then he either loses them or sits on them. And I'm like, well, I buy the good sunglasses because then it forces me to take better care of them and be cognizant of where they are. And I don't lose them and I don't break them. Because
no, 100%. And that's how my kids are with their stuff. Like they're very careful with it because they know if it breaks, it's not big. And I want to throw it out there because everybody knows I'm cheap. It's not because we're cheap. It's because we are trying to instill responsibility, number one, and number two, and fiscal responsibility too. Right. You know what I mean? So
value of the dollar, right?
Correct. And so we have the kids, they buy their own clothes that they want. You know what I mean? We'll buy them clothes and stuff, but like if they want something extra, they gotta buy it. And same thing with the cell phones. So I found that to be very, very, very helpful.
Are they thrifters? Like, do they go to the thrift store? Anything like
sometimes,
that?
And it's funny, out of my 5 kids, like some kids are spenders. Like like money is burning a hole in their pocket. And then I've got other kids who they save it all. You know what I mean? So it's very interesting kind of how that all works. But it's interesting. And look, man, every kid's different too. That's the other thing. You can't parent one kid the same way as the other kid. That's the other piece of this.
That's true.
Because I got 5 and they're all different. Even the twins. You know what I mean? So yeah. So that's the end of my parenting advice, man. It's day to day. That's where it is.
Chief Brody says, let him watch Braveheart. That's a good call.
I have no problem with that.
Braveheart. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to think of what movie needs to be next on your list. You've seen The Town now.
I have. It was good.
Personally, I think you'd like, you know what you need to watch? You said you hadn't watched either The Town, Argo, or Gone Girl. And those are, I think, Ben Affleck's 3 best movies. Argo you would like. It is based on a true story. It's about ARGO. It's about a CIA agent who goes into Iran, during like the crisis that was going on over there, and he gets these Americans out of the U.S. embassy, out of Tehran, and gets them home. And there's a little humor mixed in there. John Goodman's in it as well.
Okay.
So
okay.
Yep. So I would go with that. Historically, like based on a true story, all that kind of stuff. So
gotcha.
I think you'd like it.
Scott's coming at us hard here for some more information.
Say more, Vince. How do they earn money? What age do they start? Do you hold their money up to a certain age?
Man. Very simply, I almost want to give him my email address so he can just email me and we can just have this chat back and forth. Holidays, Christmas, holidays, birthdays, things like that, they get money. And so they have to save it. My mother-in-law gives them money for their grades. I'm a big non-fan of that, but
yeah, we didn't do that.
I don't like that at all, but I was overruled. So that's their total sources of income. My oldest used to just grab a rake and go rake people's leaves and shovel people's driveways and that kind of stuff to make money. And, obviously he's old enough. He has a couple jobs and things like that too. So that's how the money comes in. Do I hold it? No, they have to hold it. They all have wallets. They all have little secret hiding places for their money. And there's like a certain percentage. We make them put it into the bank for college. And then they have the rest for spending. So yeah. Yep. So we don't hold it though. They have to hold it. If they lose it, that's on you. And if I find it, it's going in my pocket.
There you go. There you go. All right. Parenting advice from Vince. Maybe we need to start ending the shows with Vince's parenting tips.
Oh my God. I'm setting the bar really high. I feel like we did good with the first one. Who knows what's going to happen with the next 4? That's where I'm at.
All right, that's going to do it for today's show. Again, don't forget, tomorrow we've got Notre Dame women's basketball coach Neil Ivey on the show, and we'll talk about a lot. We'll talk about a lot of these new players and Hannah Hidalgo and some of the others returning like KK Bransford and Kassan Prosper and kind of see where they are and how things are looking with all these questions everybody has about this new look Notre Dame women's basketball team for the upcoming season. Thanks for the questions there, Scott, and for everybody else in the mailbag as well. We will wrap it up with that. Hit that like button before you leave. Do appreciate you, and we will talk to you tomorrow on IB Nation Sports Talk.